John. John. And the sign flashed out its
Other than that, everything else is
warning
fine.
in the words that it was for me.
Move it towards them.
And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement poles and whispers in the sound
That's it.
of silence.
We gotta let them flame, let them speak their name, let them reach up to the clouds. They can't eat if we don't feed them. They can't read if we don't teach them. Let them shine on.
The dropout epidemic has been with us for decades. This is not the kind of challenge we're going to address overnight. And that's why the role of public media is so central.
To sit back and just say, oh, isn't that too bad? The dropout crisis is awful. What is the government doing about it? What are the schools doing about it? The real answer is, what are you doing about it?
When the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and Public Media stepped up and said that they were going to launch American Graduate, it was a breakthrough for the dropout problem.
By going deep and long on the story and showing multiple viewpoints, we really heard from the partners involved in it that this really created a deeper and shared understanding, which sort of led to smarter solutions.
Thank you for this opportunity for teachers to really speak from our heart.
This is where the answers are.
As a community, it's all of us working together.
I want to ask you to try and keep this forum together, and we can make a difference. We don't have this anyplace else.
When public media asks people to come together, people just have faith that it will be an open and fair and useful dialogue.
It's highlighting what's successful, things that are actually working. It gives the nation hope that this is a fixable problem.
Judge Jimmy Edwards started the Innovative Concept Academy in the same North St. Louis neighborhood he grew up in.
But for public media, I do not think we would be where we are today.
This is public media at its absolute best, taking on a challenge led by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, all of us saying, getting our young people to graduate matters.
The statistics are dire, but they're moving in the right direction because people of goodwill are saying this is not good enough for our country.
Every child deserves a champion. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion?
We know that there are students who would have slipped through the cracks and dropped out from school, who are on a graduate and go on to college and be productive workers and contributing citizens.
You graduate from high school, it's a good thing. It's like you did something good in life, like you were so successful.
Today, we're actually on pace to meet for the first time the high school graduation rate. The class of 2020, 90% of them would actually graduate from high school.
American Graduate is helping students like mine stay on the path to graduation.
American Graduate's resources are helping students connect with the curriculum.
American Graduate is making a difference for students like me.
Remember, our kids need us, and the country needs our kids educated. Let's make it happen.
On May 7th, Makisa sponsored its first Disconnected Youth Summit.
Metropolitan Phoenix has the greatest number of disconnected youth. That's a wicked problem.
Leaders from across the country came together to discuss the issue.
If my kids are disadvantaged, they have all of the disadvantages of success.
And begin to mobilize towards effective solutions.
The imagination will allow us to do something transformative that we can only do together. We can't do it alone.
Makisa and the Greater Phoenix metropolitan community working together to connect the disconnected. For more information, visit education.maricopa.gov/connect. Join us by being a part of the solution at the next Disconnected Youth Summit being held October 15th, 2014. On May 7th, Makisa sponsored The Maricopa County Education Service Agency's professional development sessions equip teachers with a deeper understanding of the standards and demonstrate the pedagogical expertise needed to encourage student understanding and application.
I walked away from the workshop with strategies and resources that I could immediately put to use in my classroom the next day, which I did.
These sessions include discussions with colleagues, allowing the opportunity to collaborate with others from across Maricopa County, as well as hands-on activities, so teachers return to the classroom ready to implement helpful strategies and techniques personalized to that teacher's needs.
It was very understandable and user-friendly, something that you can take right back to your classroom and use.
Wendy was awesome. She was engaging. She treated us like adults. She valued our time. I felt like a professional. It was by far the best training I have ever received.
Visit education.maricopa.gov to register for MCESA's upcoming professional development sessions. The Maricopa County Education Service Agency's professional development sessions equip teachers with a deeper understanding.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the second Re-Engaging Disconnected Youth Summit. For those who are here for the first summit, we welcome you back. And for those who are here for the second summit, we welcome you for this very exciting and engaging conversation that we hope leads to further commitment for this issue. My name is Kathy Waters. I'm the Director of Adult Probation Services at the Administrative Office of the Court for the Supreme Court. And it's my pleasure this morning to be able to not only to be involved in the summit, in the first summit, but the second one, but to introduce you to our moderator this morning. We were lucky enough to have him for the first time, but when we reached out and said, hey, how about coming back for the second summit, he agreed. So to that, I'm very grateful. I want to introduce you to this Disconnected Youth Summit's moderator, Rick DeBrule. After 31 years as a reporter and anchor on KPNX TV, Rick has joined the Arizona Bar Association and now serves as their Chief Communications Officer. And please join me in welcoming Rick, and I think he will lead us through the day with very much excitement and information. So thanks, Rick, for being here.
That's a big buildup, excitement and enthusiasm. I'm not sure I can deliver on both those fronts. I do appreciate the fact that I have been invited back. It's one thing to get invited to do something the first time. When somebody actually invites you back the second time, you either didn't do it right the first time and they want you to do it over, or you maybe actually pulled it off the first time and faked your way through it. I do appreciate being here. You know, it's interesting that the first time around listening to all the discussions about disconnected youth, it actually kind of reminds me of a friend of mine who actually owns, or I shouldn't say owns, but runs an orphanage in South Africa. Great family. They actually live over in Litchfield Park. Phenomenal family. They went to Africa and discovered all the need for AIDS orphans, and actually took their life savings, bought a 70-acre piece of land outside of a small town in South Africa, and started an orphanage. Right now they have about 56 kids at this orphanage. And the interesting thing about what they try to do with this orphanage, there's what I call subsistence orphanages, where they just take in every child they can and they cram every inch of the space they can. And those, they're still doing great work. This is an orphanage where their goal is to help their kids reach their potential, whatever that potential may be. And they run the orphanage, it's similar to the way that you would run your family. They give these kids the opportunities to do all kinds of things. But the interesting thing that my friend keeps pointing out, it's called Open Arms Home for Children, if you ever want to take a look at it. Open Arms Home for Children. There's some website, I'm sure, we'll look it up. But the point that he always makes is, you know, every child is different. What he's trying to do with his kids in the orphanage in South Africa is help them reach their potential, whatever that may be. They have one kid who has fetal alcohol syndrome, has a lot of issues. We always joke that the potential for that kid is to be the gardener at Open Arms. They have other kids, frankly, who are college track. but they're orphans. They have no money. They were on the streets. How do you help those kids reach that potential to become a college-level student when you're living on the streets in South Africa in an AIDS orphans world? But that's what this organization is all about. It's all about reaching that potential and for him to help those kids reach that potential. And that's what today is about. Today is about reaching out and trying to help the kids who are disconnected reach whatever that potential may be. To find that level, whether it's something simple, whether it's being a gardener, if that's what the potential is, but at least being a contributing member of society, or potentially something more. So hopefully during the course of the day, we'll learn something, some way that maybe we can make that connection and help those kids become connected again. Now, as we mentioned a few moments ago, this is the second time that this group has been convened. I'm sure some of you were here the first time. Others are new to this. So we're going to play a quick video, some of the highlights of that very first one that we held about 6 months ago.
Jaleel, who's doing fine now, is a human being who did not choose to be born into a family with a dead mother and an absentee father. And we have so many systems and philosophies in place that would completely blame him for his lack of success.
We are all here today at the second Disconnected Youth Summit because we care about the area's disconnected youth. We are committed to changing the fact that about 20% of Phoenix area young adults are not in school or at a job.
We have to take to heart that this community was #1 with disconnected youth and maybe #3 now, but either way, it's too darn high. And what are we doing as a community to minimize disconnected youth of the future? So as the kids come up to the pipeline,
we've got a wicked problem here in the Metro Phoenix area, and you know that because you see it every day.
Today, you are sitting amongst leaders from multiple youth-serving agencies and school-related organizations, all here to re-engage the disconnected youth throughout our communities.
they are not somebody else's problem. They're not somebody else's issue. They are all of our issue.
What kind of Phoenix do you want to live in 10 years? What kind of Arizona do you want to live in 20 years?
We want Arizona to become an even better place to work, learn, and live. By being here today, we're making re-engaging our disconnected youth a priority and are ready to tackle a comprehensive plan to reverse this trend in our Phoenix area youth.
Second summit. Who knows what highlights we'll have for the third one if we get that far. Time to leap into our program. I want to introduce our first speaker up here, which is going to be Dr. Covey. Dr. Don Covey is the Maricopa County Superintendent of Schools. If you think you've got a busy day, think about this. Dr. Covey is responsible for 712,000 students. Oh yeah, he also is responsible for 37,000 educators. You know, I've got 2 kids. That's it. And I have a hard time being responsible for them. He's won many national awards. He's been responsible for a number of schools, and these days, he's going to be our first speaker who's going to come up and start us through this process. So please welcome Dr. Don Covey.
Well, good morning, everyone. By a show of hands, how many were here for Summit 1? Good. How about Summit 2? Somebody's not here yet. And for the future, Summit 3, how many of you plan to come back? All right, that's what we like, commitment. What's really unique and phenomenal is we have great leadership. This room represents a tremendous amount of that leadership. And it's through our great mayor, who has stepped up and not shunned the responsibility. He didn't necessarily build the issue with regard to disconnected and dropouts and disengaged youth, but he certainly has stood up and made that a major priority to his life and what he's doing. And it's a pleasure to work with him as well as the educators and the different agencies, public, private, and if you will, foundational organizations. It's kind of unique on how we organize things, so you have to just bear with me for a few moments. I need for you to pull out a couple things. First of all, there's a nice document, it's kind of like a big page like this. You pull that out, I can kind of give you an overview of what we're all about today. And what I'd like you to do is turn just to the vertical part. Looks like this. Okay? We have a simple objective today, a simple goal. It's right at the very top, following the Re-Engaging Disconnected Youth Summit 2. It states, affirm a collective shared vision. Affirm a collective shared vision to re-engage disconnected youth through re-engagement centers, through educational momentum, through career connections, and through positive youth development. Those are 4 pathways, and through the great efforts of our R&D staff, and particularly a young lady, I have to give really a shout out to her. Where are you, Elora? Elora's out working on something. And so we'll catch a little bit. Elora Diaz has done a great job of R&Ding, along with my co-director and co-producer, Christine Morris, sitting over here at the chair all by herself. She really does smell pleasant, so if anyone wants to sit and join her, that'd be good to do too, so that'd be helpful. So one of the things we discovered is that we're not alone. That's a great feeling. Disconnected youth many times are alone. I like Steve Jobs' quote, we all are involved in building our lives. Disconnected youth are just trying to live their life, almost not day by day, but hour by hour. And so what we're all about is saying is, how do we engage a population in this geographical area between our dropouts and our disconnected youth of over 200,000. So in this room here, if I just take one, each one of you represent 1,000 of disconnected youth or dropouts in the Maricopa, the metropolitan area of Phoenix. Think about that. You represent 1,000 students. If you had a personal mission and said, what can I do about that? I'm just one person. Well, you look across this room and to know that it's not just one person, but the access to the assets that many of us are doing very well collectively. We don't lose our identity of our organization or what we represent of our vision, mission, and goals as an organization, an agency, a company, or a system. What you do are you become a part of those where we have a common vision and a common set of goals. If we collectively can absorb that and affirm that in our hearts and our mind, we can make a difference of that 200,000 number. Now, folks, that's young people between 16 and 24. That's a cohort. That's huge. But we also have to be mindful of what precedes that. Because if we don't turn off the spigot up here at early age, early education, early childhood, unfortunately that may continue to grow. When I first took office in 2009, I looked at this research data. There were 160,000 combinations of dropouts and disconnected. Today it's 225,000. We've not stopped the bleeding. So we say a collective, affirm a vision collectively, a community vision. That if we have these 4 pathways which we've researched, and we don't say that we're going to reinvent things when people are doing so well collectively and nationally. So we looked across the country and said, who's really in the driver's seat, who's in action? And our vetting process went like this. You had to have at least 3 years, ideally 5 years, of success of working with disconnected youth. And we said, so what do you do? I remember the mayor of Tucson, Mayor Stanton, that said, you know, my gosh, this is overwhelming. 250,000 young people? What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? Well, what's interesting, in Summit 1, we talked about the why. This summit talks about the what. Summit 3 is going to talk about the how. So between now and then, there's going to be activities that's going to get us to that how group. So let me kind of show you how this format works. On this vertical page here, we have those national recognitions, and we also have the folks from Philadelphia, Boston, the Los Angeles, and also Tucson. They have demonstrated, and they've been vetted, that they have found ways to re-engage disconnected youth. We have to absorb and utilize that information. That's the gift that human beings have to one another. It's incumbent upon us to also help future generations so that they have the wisdom and the knowledge of us for what they do in the future. As we can gain the wisdom and the knowledge of those who have preceded us, in different parts of the country, right here in our state, but also locally. I'll come back to that local analysis in just a moment. So we're going to hear from these individuals because they've done something very similar. They say success of reconnecting youth has 4 pathways. If you turn your page for just a moment, you'll see those 4 pathways, which are, to the left, re-engagement centers. And re-engagement centers, I'll go through just this. There are 4 subtopics, 4 areas that are critical for re-engagement. There's an identification and outreach. There is the initial phases of developing re-engagement centers. There's assessment mapping. Assessment mapping is saying what are the assets that you currently have? Where are they located? How do we find these young people? When we drove into work, you didn't see the 250,000 young people standing around, did you? Where are they? How do you grab hold? And then how do we make viable assessments and individualized plans to help these individuals to become successful, not just living their life hour by hour, but they start building their lives. And our goal is this: we need to create, develop, and provide opportunities. We can't just send them a check and say, here's $10,000 for this year, $15,000, because once it's gone, there's no way for them to recreate it. So what we do is building those opportunities. So by our research, we found that these 4 pathways, re-engagement centers, educational momentum, career connections, positive youth development. There are 16 component parts. On your name tags, there's a color code. So we organize ourselves by that color code. If you're in red, and you have that red on your sign, that's the one you selected, that's right. That's re-engagement centers. And when we break out this afternoon, we'll go educational momentum is the blue. The little greenish color is career connections, and the gray happens to be positive youth development. Folks, we know by research, best practices, and the evidence-based information we have, if we can employ these and customizing it for our use here in the metropolitan area of Phoenix, we can begin reconnecting a huge number of this population. We're going to hear a few minutes from our mayor about how this is so significant of the fiscal and the social impact of what it's costing us. And dare we not deal with that cost now? It'll be unbelievably, intolerably expensive that we can't afford this population. So with that, look in your programs now. Go to page 8. You know, I never had this much cooperation when I was teaching. You know, that's pretty good. All you're great students out there, you know? And they either didn't bring their book, they didn't do their homework or anything. Look, you all have your homework with you here. That's good. And your textbooks. When we conclude this afternoon, you're going to be asked to say, based on what you experienced in each of these pathways, we're going to do breakout sessions with those who want to take the next leap with us between now and Summit 3 to say is, how are we going to employ, how are we going to implement these 4 pathways with these specific 4 criteria that make that a successful pathway. And so on there, on page 8, you'll see there's color-coded again. There's blue, red, green, and gray. And it'll say is, we will conduct then two meetings that might basically be held in November and December at our facilities down on Central and Indian School Road. If you sign up for this, that shows you really have a commitment. We know we don't have all the answers, but collectively we do have those answers. And so by taking a good hard look and asking questions today, we're going to also ask you to do this. At the end of each of these subtopical areas, you're going to either use your handheld calculations, what you have, your appliance, or we'll provide laptops for you, where you take an assessment and say, what you heard here by these presenters, we're doing this well. This is great. This is one of our greatest strengths. Over here, we have some gaps. I said, wow, I didn't realize that you need to have some type of GIS system to find and locate these young people. And if you don't have, we collectively then will tell us that that becomes our scope of work that we need to do between now and February the 12th. And in the discussion of what that looks like and analyzing the data and information will be in these sub-sessions in which we work at throughout between now and the 12th of February. take a hard look. We're doing some great things. We need to do better. We got to find out where our strengths are, build on those strengths, and then say where we have areas, and then it's up to us collectively to find the human capital and the human fiscal resources to enable us to make these things happen. That is what's so powerful and phenomenal, all this. So, you know, hear that silence? Picture yourself as a young person getting up this morning. And sometimes words, pictures, and emotion can say a whole lot more than somebody behind a microphone. I'd like to have two very young and talented people join us right now and give you a rendition with sight and pictures, with music and words of a disconnected youth and what they're experiencing as we're sitting here.
Darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never share, and no one dares disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know, silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you, take my arms that I might reach you, but my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, and the sign flashed out its warning to the words that it was forming, and the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence.
That's Danae and John Murray, and Danae is one of our McKeesians. She was one of our staff people, and always looking for that unusual talent. And even though you're an employee of McKeesa, just like youth, there's treasures and gifts in everyone, and so appreciate both of you. Thank you very much. This next individual I'm going to introduce is phenomenal, but before I get there, he's also been very instrumental in helping us and our city I got to ask another survey question. I love these survey questions. How many of you are Starbuckians out there? That means you drink Starbucks coffee. Did you notice that we put Starbucks out here in the room? Well, what's really nice, the United States Conference of Mayors, under the leadership of President Mayor Kevin Johnson, who used to live here. And Kevin Johnson, you know who that is, Mark, by chance? Don't know who Kevin Johnson is. Somebody help him. Who's Kevin Johnson? There you go. See, that's what, see, Mark, this we talk about, helping each other succeed, you know? So, anyway, he is currently the mayor of Sacramento, California. And is partnering with Starbucks, the first of its kind civic private community and model called Solution City. And there are 5 solution cities in America. Sacramento, Orlando, Phoenix, Columbus, and Baltimore. And it's designed for citizens to have a voice and opportunity to come together to identify and address some of the most critical city issues. As one of Starbucks' participating cities, the area selected by Phoenix, through leadership of our mayor, is disconnected youth. And so there's a series of town hall meetings. I'm sure the mayor will mention that in his presentation to you in discussion. And basically, it's monthly to get a town hall beside yourselves to invite others to join us in terms of how they see the issues, challenges, and also, but better importantly, are the solutions to that. We have 4 Starbuckians here this morning, so I'm going to ask, is Sue Kramer here? Sue, where are you? Stand up. Out there drinking coffee? There you are. Sue, don't move down, Sue. How about your colleague? Where's Lisa? Stand up, Lisa. How about Alicia? All right. How about James? See, 1 guy, 3 girls. That's pretty good. Give them a hand. So, without further discussion from this individual who's elected, and I don't have my staff on side of me because they're much smarter than I am, and they always help me out and say, okay, Don, that's it. And I see this cut sign like this over here. So with that, I'd like to really give a real good, strong shout out, and I cannot appreciate this individual more than taking the leadership, taking responsibility, taking the challenges of disengaged and disconnected youth. Our Mayor, Mayor Stanton.
And I brought some friends with me. My friends are Paul Kohler, who I think everyone in this room knows, with West Ed. And Paul is one of the best established education leaders here in the state of Arizona, having formerly served as superintendent of the Peoria School District and advisor to multiple governors of both political persuasions, and now is the lead professional helping my Mayor's Education Roundtable, made up of mayors across the state. Jack Lunsford, who probably everyone in this room also knows, has a legendary career in public service, having worked as a high-level professional with the Maricopa Community Colleges. Unfortunately, had to work the legislature in that capacity for many years, fighting the good fight for higher education, particularly community colleges. We served as president of Westmark, which is a government business alliance in the West Valley, and now I'm lucky enough to have him on my staff. He's the most overqualified person in the history of the city of Phoenix to serve on a mayor's staff, and he's with me right now, but thank you for serving in that capacity. So I think I'll just give a few brief framing remarks, and then I think Paul is going to lead us in a guided discussion about the issue of disconnected youth. First, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you, Don Covey and Makisa, for taking such a strong leadership role on this critically important issue. Like you, my heart was broken when I opened up the paper and saw that Arizona and Phoenix and our region had the highest rate of disconnected youth 6 or 8 months ago, when the article was. And I love it that you decided to roll up your sleeves and use your leadership position in this community and the incredible professionals that you have at Makisa to really take on this issue. Organize not only this series of summits, which I'm proud you do, but not just talk about an issue, but actually take action in doing something and looking at best practice around the country. It's the exact right approach, and I'm proud to be your partner in this endeavor, and Chris as well. And so I just want to say thank you, Don Covey. Let's give a round of applause for your incredible leadership on this issue. And of course, second, as I look across the room, so many people are already passionately involved in the issue of disconnected youth or opportunity youth. I know we use different phrases on different occasions. Both apply. And many of you are probably thinking, what took you so long? This has been an issue in our community for a long period of time, and I know that you're glad to be kind of having others working on this issue as well, and realizing what a devastating impact having such a high percentage of opportunity youth in our community, what a devastating impact that can have long-term on this community. As the Mayor's Education Roundtable, which we've discussed in the past, is a group of 10 mayors from around the state, big city, small city, rural, urban, Democrat, Republican. We have done some scientific work. Paul found an outstanding researcher from the University of California system that tried to put a dollar number first and foremost on our dropout rate, and secondarily on the economic impact of disconnected youth. And one of the benefits I have of being mayor is that sometimes people still listen to me. Sometimes people still listen to mayors. And we do have a bully pulpit that we can utilize. And I wanted to use that bully pulpit to try to get the message out to this community about the economic impact of this issue. We heard the beautiful music, and I know so many people in this room care passionately about individuals who are currently disconnected, currently opportunity youth, and the passion to get them re-engaged so that they can fill their individual potentials as human beings. And of course, we all agree with that. But there's a collective impact. There is a collective economic devastation on our community if we don't get our hearts and minds and public policies around this issue. So in the very near future, we'll be issuing a study about the economic impact. I won't give you all of the gory details of that study, only to say that it is in the multiples of tens of billions of dollars, the lifetime impact of having such a high percentage of opportunity youth. That's statewide. In the city of Phoenix alone, that number is 14 billion lifetime impact of having such a high percentage. We can't afford that. It's simply unacceptable. I can't achieve my goals that I want to achieve as mayor. We can't achieve our goals that we want as a city. We can't maximize our potential as a community if we don't, again, get our hearts and minds and public policies around this issue. So the work that's being discussed here today, the planning that's being done, bringing together the best minds in this issue, it's really important work, not just for the young people that will have better opportunities in their lives and careers as a result, but also for the long-term economic impact on our community. This is a very, very important issue. And one of the things that I can do as mayor is to help get the message across that this is a critically important population. The 16 to 24-year-olds that currently aren't in school and currently are not in an employment situation, they are not a lost generation. There are no throwaway people in our community or our city. And it's not a situation where we should think that we've lost that generation. We need to look to the next generation. We need to look to the next generation as well to make sure they stay in school, graduate high school, move on to college, and increase the college attainment rate. But those that are currently disconnected, we have to do everything we can to re-engage them in education, in employment, in job training opportunities. And so part of my message and part of what I have to do as mayor is to get a larger message across to the community that this is a critically important population, and we have to care. Care not just on an individual basis, but care on a collective basis. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about that. We and I have not done a good enough job of getting the message across to the larger community about how important this issue is, and that these kids matter. They matter to our current economic situation, and they matter to our long-term economic situation. And we've got a series of public policies that we're working on in the city of Phoenix. I see Judy Reno in the audience, and College Depot is a great program through the Phoenix Public Library programs. Our librarians and our library system is the most innovative programs we have at the city of Phoenix. Please don't tell any of the other city departments that I said that, including those that may be represented here. But they are awesome. And so we'll be offering, starting in January, an online high school diploma, not a GED, but an actual online high school diploma, focusing in on young people that may not have graduated high school with their normal class period, who may want to get a high school diploma beyond just a GED. City of Phoenix has a role to play in that regard, so we'll be making that more formal announcement in the very near future, but it's a very exciting opportunity. I do want to say thank you to our friends at Starbucks as well. Starbucks did choose Phoenix, one of 5 cities around the country, and not only are we doing galvanizing these conversations around our local coffee shops and using coffee shop culture as a way to discuss community issues, but I do know at the end of that, Starbucks will be putting in some resources to help this community on the issue of disconnected youth. I'm proud of my partnership with Phoenix Union and Maricopa Community Colleges on Degree Phoenix, where we're focusing particularly in on our Latino youth and our fast-growing Latino population, and the case that's been made by Morrison Institute and others that if we don't get our hearts and minds around the issue of increasing our graduation rate among our Latino population, we simply can't achieve our goals as a city, and that includes getting every single Phoenix Union student to apply to college and every single Phoenix Union student to apply for financial aid at the same time so they can understand that college is an affordable thing, and many, many other programs that we'll discuss. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to a good discussion with Paul and Jack. Thank you, Paul.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It's an honor to be here. You know that we were all here at the first summit, and honored to be back. And I want to join Mayor Stanton in thanking Dr. Covey and his team for doing this, and especially want to reach out to Mayor Stanton and the other 9 mayors in the Mayor's Roundtable that have taken this on as an issue. You know, we formed the Mayor's Roundtables to give the mayors an opportunity to use their bully pulpit and talk to the people they talk to, which is often different from the people some of us talk to, about the issues of dropout and now disconnected youth. So Mayor Stanton's leadership in that roundtable project is very significant. So I know there are educators in the room, and I know I am now violating the PowerPoint Code of Ethics, saying what in the world is he thinking putting something like that up on the slide? So I understand what I've just done. So let me tell you what this is and what you're seeing, but I'm going to read the numbers to you because I just wanted you to see the visual of what's going to come out. Mayor Stanton and the other 9 mayors in the roundtable asked me to bring in some researchers to begin to describe quantitatively the problem of disconnected youth and dropout prior to that. So we had, as the mayor said, we had a very capable researcher at UC Santa Barbara working with an economist at Queens College. And what they wanted to do was to pull the actual data, the numbers for disconnected youth, out of the 2012 census data and convert it to the economic impact that the mayor just referenced. Because there's 2 ways to look at this. There is the individual student or the child before 18 years old who is disconnected, and that in itself is something to focus on, the individual. As the mayor said, when you take all of them together and you begin to describe the collective impact in terms of dollars, then you can begin to talk to the broader community, the business community. So this is something we can't sustain. So the slide that you're seeing first is a pre-release slide for the Mayor's Roundtable of how the state of Arizona's disconnected youth impacts our economy. And the slide describes that the disconnected youth in this study are clearly less likely to find a job, less likely to earn a living wage, more likely to have poor health, more likely to engage in criminal behavior, and more likely to require public assistance of various kinds. The outcomes collectively have a detrimental effect and impact on the well-being of our cities and state. They also penetrate and generate significant economic losses to the state. So on the state of Arizona slide, and then I'll show you the slide for Phoenix, every disconnected youth in the state of Arizona produces $695,100 in economic losses over his or her lifetime. And those are economic losses both to the societal costs for that student and for that student and for the lack of fiscal contribution that they're making to the state. $695,000, that's that first figure. In the state of Arizona, in this study, there were 183,200 disconnected youth, 16 to 24, in the state, statewide. It's about 22% of our population. So when you collectively take that all the way through, you've got $43 billion from that one cohort of economic cost to the state of Arizona for the one cohort, $43 billion. But the study also takes it a different place and said if we reduce just by half, which is not the goal is for all, but just by half, if we reduce that, we accrue to the state $21 billion of gain by reducing that in half, just a half of the numbers. So there's a very positive look to this, that if we can get a hold of this problem statewide, we gain a lot. So let's take a look at the Phoenix, City of Phoenix slide. Very, very much the same. It's set up exactly the same. And each of the 10 cities in the roundtable have the same profile generated for them, and which will be released soon. As the mayor said, we've got in the city of Phoenix around 45,000 disconnected youth in the city of Phoenix. And it's about 24% of the 16 to 24 age group disconnected. Way, way too high, both in ranking with other cities, but just in terms of numbers. Each disconnected youth in the city of Phoenix produces $765,900 in economic losses over his or her lifetime due to decreased earnings and increased public and private expenses for health, crime, and welfare. Think about that. These losses occur both during their youth years and during their entire adult lives. The lifetime economic losses to the city of Phoenix from the estimated 45,000 disconnected youth in 2012, just for the one cohort, amount to $34.5 billion. Of that amount, $13.3 billion represents fiscal losses alone. Fiscal losses alone. And it's very easy to understand. If you're not working, you're not paying taxes, you're not contributing to the well-being of the city, well-being of the state, when you look at the state frame. On the positive side, reducing the number of disconnected youth by half would generate more than $17.2 billion in social benefits and more than $13 billion in fiscal benefits, most of which would occur to both the city and the state. So it's a serious and it's a dire picture. Again, our purpose with the Mayor's Roundtable is to put a picture together that can get the attention of the broader community in both the state and each of the cities in the Roundtable. These are stunning numbers. We released them. Mayor, we were at all the mayors last week in Tucson, the mayor's office, Mayor Rothschild's office. We gathered to release the data. We had our researcher take the mayors. I would say that the reaction from the mayors and staff in that meeting was, they were stunned. It was stunned and not sure quite what to do with this and not quite sure how and when we're going to release it, because each of the mayors feel, as we'll get to the next part of this, an obligation to not only describe the problem in these terms, but to say what is our commitment to do something about this. And I think that's what we're going to wait for, and then we'll release it. But it's a stunning picture for the state. The last thing I'll say, and I'm going to ask Mayor Stanton and Jack Lunsford to talk about things that are now in place and things that need to be in place in the city of Phoenix. Each month when the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases their unemployment rate, and for those of you that are still in the stock market or have any money left after this week, everybody watches that number, the unemployment rate. If you look into the Bureau of Labor Statistics monthly release, since the Great Recession, there is a band of what the Bureau is calling underemployed citizens. Many of them are the 16 to 24, underemployed. And this economy has not come back in a vibrant way to find opportunities for them to work. And that's one of the reasons it's now worse than it might have been 10 years ago, because the economy is not picking up these kids. So let me turn now first to the mayor again, and then to Jack Lunsford about what can be done, as we think about solutions on that side of it, what's possible. Mayor?
Well, thank you, Paul, for your leadership with the Arizona Mayor's Roundtable and for your help in
putting together this this study, which will be released and will be, I think, have a great impact on this community, because a lot of people are going to have the exact same reaction that I had, Mayor Rothschild had, the other mayors, and the professionals in our offices. It's jaw-dropping. It is a devastating number. And yes, the economy is still a very difficult economy. This is the slowest recovery from a recession that we've seen in American history since the Great Depression. But that does not escape the fact that our community is still worse than other communities. So what can be done? Well, first, I want to thank every single person in here, because you're here because you care. You're here because you're affiliated with a school district or a program, or in some leadership capacity that you're in a position to do something about it, and you care about this, this issue. I'm actually most heartened when I learn about the incredible programs that are going on in our community. Like so many other things, many wonderful people are doing incredible work, but we aren't as coordinated as we could or should be, and we're not doing a good enough job in a coordinated way of informing the young people themselves, their families, their loved ones, those that care about them, about what the opportunities are, what the help that is out there, either through education programs that make it an easier transition back to an education track, job training programs, Job Corps, et cetera, that are already out there. Other volunteer opportunities that lead to employment. We haven't done a very good job in that regard. We're going to hear about best practices later on in this in today's events, and some of the best practices involve in creating re-engagement centers, physical places where people can go to get this information to help them or their loved ones re-engage. We also have to give people hope. Part of it is a loss of hope, that with this difficult economy, is there really a place for me and my future? And there is. I'm an optimist. We're in the city of Phoenix, we're really taking great steps to try to improve our economy, build a stronger economy, build a long-range, competitive economy. But we can't do it, obviously, if the disengagement numbers are so disconnected numbers are so high. We also, as a city, we want to be pushed, and I say pushed by you in this community. If you have ideas about what more we can be doing, let us know. We often get told, hey, cities don't have anything to do with education. Mayor, why are you talk about education so much and get involved in education issues? That's not within your jurisdiction. City of Phoenix does not run schools. Thank the good Lord, we don't run schools. That allows me to be a free agent, if you will, and use my position to be as supportive of our schools as I can be, to allow the City of Phoenix, through our library programs and our Parks Department programs and our after-school programs, to be the very best partner. But actually now we are getting directly involved in the education business through this online career high school that I'm talking about. And we're willing to do other things to be as creative as possible, think outside the proverbial box, because the role of the city is to be as flexible, nimble, innovative as possible, to be your best partner. The reality is that anything I want to achieve as mayor, anything that we want to achieve as a city, it simply won't be possible if the numbers stay where they are. So we have to go outside of our traditional roles if we're going to actually see real success on this issue. Jack.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things that I get to do is work with this mayor, and I don't say this gratuitously because I knew him before I became a member of his team, but with his focus and leadership, in particular on P-12 education. And it's given me a great opportunity to expand some of my reach in what I've been doing. Two areas that I want to mention this morning relate to what's going on in the area of disconnected youth and potential solutions. But before I do that, I want you to take one moment and just think about a teacher or a number of teachers in your lives that inspired you in some way. Pro and con sometimes. But but they inspired you. I wonder how many disconnected youth can reflect back about those teachers that inspired them to continue to pursue something more besides leaving school and not working and not doing anything. That's the kind of problem I believe that we're dealing with out there is, though, for whatever reason, those youth haven't had that inspiration that we have. Mentioned by both Don Covey and Mayor Stanton is Solution City. I've had the great opportunity to work with my colleague Adora Lewis to help pull that effort together in the city of Phoenix. And I wanted to just share with you briefly about what its focus is. As was alluded to earlier, you know, the U.S. Conference of Mayors selected 5 cities. We were one of them. There were 3 paths that we had to choose from that we wanted to focus on. It was very, very apparent to us because of the other work that the Mayor's Roundtable was doing, that Don Covey's office was doing, that we're all doing, that as Starbucks calls it, opportunity youth, and I think we're going to get there in our process, but we chose disconnected youth. So we initially convened we invited about 40 people, about 30 people showed to a coffee, a broad range of community folks, but including some really interesting students who we found out were disconnected youth. And they came to us and shared their experiences, and we had a very, very open dialogue about the issue and things that we need to be doing. That effort was at the end of September. The next Solution City conversation is going to be November 18th. I don't think that the store can handle this many people, but I would like to extend, at some risk, an invitation for some who might be interested to join us, or at least provide input to us as we move through this process. At the very end of it, the goal is to identify 1 or 2 efforts that we can implement and work with nonprofit to do so in conjunction with Starbucks. It's really, really exciting. I don't have time to go into it in more depth, but that's really exciting. The other thing I want to highlight, we don't think about this as its impact on disconnected youth, but after-school programs, many of you know their importance, but about to be released is the Arizona After 3 p.m. Study that's just been released. Arizona wasn't mentioned in the top 10 before. Not even sure we were in the top 20 for participation and effectiveness of after-school programs. We're number 6 in this study. Finally, Arizona has reached the top 10 in a positive way. A couple of sports teams are in the top 25. That's okay. But in terms of education, we reached something more. And we know of the youth that were mentioned earlier, but also that we have also 178,000 who are participating in after school. So we've got nearly that many in disconnected youth. These students could be disconnected if they didn't have an after-school program to keep them on track. So there's a lot more information on it. That's going to be released shortly, but I wanted to acknowledge it because I think it's important for the topics that we're talking about.
That's great stuff. By the way, the Starbucks is the one at 7th Avenue and Camelback. And before we had the discussion, we had a coffee tasting by a barista, which was, you know, more intricate than a wine tasting.
Yes.
And I realized I had been drinking coffee wrong all these years. Thank you, Starbucks.
Thank you, Sue, for leading that. Yes.
So as we close this, and let me just leave you with one thought. So when these 10 mayors came together to focus on education, again, reflecting on Mayor Stanton's comments, the question was asked, why would mayors who don't run their education systems do this? They have plenty to do. Why would the mayors do this? The answer was, and the thought for you, is because we're all in this together. So that's the thought for today. We are all in this together. We've got to get this right. Honored to be working with leaders at the city and county and state level. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Good, Greg. Thanks, Jack. All right, Mayor Stanton asked the question, what can be done? And really that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the day, and in particular the rest of the morning. We have a group of national speakers that we brought in to talk about some of the things that are being done both around the state and around the country. And our first keynote speaker, we're going to be talking about something happening here in Arizona. It's down in Tucson. And our first keynote speaker is Amanda Cusick, who is the Senior Director of Youth Development for the United Way of Tucson in southern Arizona. Tucson was one of 21 cities that was awarded the Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund grant to implement a collective impact model to address the Opportunity Youth crisis. So if I can ask Amanda to come up to talk about some of the things that have been done. This program has been in process down there for about a year, and I think this is our first chance to hear from somebody who can talk about things that are happening here in Arizona. So please welcome Amanda Cusick.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I know we're running a little bit over time, so I'm going to hopefully relieve Alora's worries, shave a couple more minutes off of my scheduled time to get us back on track. Wow, what a great crowd. We've all been sitting, though, for a really long time. And so I just want everybody to take a deep breath, stand up, stretch for just a couple seconds, because I want you to be really present for what I'm about to talk to you about. Just a second, stretch, shake it out. Awesome, thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. So, as was stated, now it's actually been a year and a half ago, Tucson was invited to apply for the Aspen Institute's Forum for Community Solutions Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund. Yes, that is a mouthful. And we were awarded a $100,000 development grant to really start the conversation in our community. No collective work had been done around the Opportunity Youth population. Lots of programs, lots of great programs and organizations providing many services, great services. And I'm going to quote somebody here. If you're all familiar with the Strive partnership, Strive Together, Jeff Edmondson has a great quote, and it absolutely applied to Tucson. We were program rich and system poor. And I'm going to bet that Phoenix has the same thing going on as many big metropolitan areas across the nation do. So what we decided to employ under the direction of the Aspen Institute was a collective impact model. And this is not collaboration as usual. It has very, very specific elements to it, and I'm going to go over each of the 5 specific elements of collective impact and how we've been employing them to make a difference in improving systems, developing new systems, enhancing current systems to serve Opportunity Youth better. And forgive me, I can try and use the word disconnected youth, but really in my bones, I don't believe in negative labels. I hate labels at all, frankly. But if I'm going to refer to a certain subset of our population, and if I have to describe them, I want to describe them with a positive aspect. So I am going to refer to these youth as youth with tremendous opportunity, because they do. The stories that are already coming out of our work in Tucson are phenomenal. And I believe language is very important. And the way we speak determines how we act. And it determines the type of solutions we come up with in our community. And it also informs how we engage with the young people themselves. So if you want me to use disconnected youth for today, I will. But you're going to have to call me out on it. Otherwise, just as you know, as you listen to my presentation, I will be referring to these young people as Opportunity Youth. So in the first element of collective impact, I'm just going to say it. You got to get a backbone. And don't assume you have one. And what do I mean by that? I mean, there has to be some central organization in the region, in the community, preferably a neutral party that is not providing a direct service themselves, but is going to be the convener, that's going to be the one helping facilitate the very tough conversations that you have to have. And if you forgive me, I'm just going to keep it very real today. This is not all kumbaya work. It's not. We've been having some really tough conversations down in Tucson. There are people who some days want to throw shoes at me, and there are some days where I want to throw shoes at them. But at the end of the day, we all go back to our vision and say, what's really important? What are we really here for? And that really can't stick if you don't have one organization, at least, with dedicated staff waking up every single day thinking about what needs to be done for the collective. Because the agencies that are providing all the different services and programs in the schools, they got a job to do for that in providing high quality services. It's too much to ask, I think, a school or a program, a community-based organization, to also now be responsible for the collective. So just learning from what's been happening down in Tucson, our community said, yes, we definitely need a backbone organization that's going to be the glue that holds all of this together. And why I say don't assume you have one, this was also a tough conversation we had at the very beginning of our development grant award. We at United Way were the agency that was invited to apply, but we didn't assume that we were going to stay the agency that was going to be that neutral convener, keeping it all together. And so in the very beginning of that development grant, we had a conversation with all the different organizations and schools in the room at the table and said, for this first year, this is it, we were awarded the grant, but it's up to this collective body to decide if you want United Way to stay the backbone organization. There were several other organizations in our community that we thought probably had the potential to serve that role. And so we wanted to lift up those organizations, have them be a part of the conversation as well. And I remember that day, we brought this up very much in the beginning, about a year and a half ago, and the United Way staff left the room, and we let the providers and the schools talk amongst themselves. If there was enough trust there, if they liked the way the work was going so far, and if they wanted United Way or another agency to continue that role. That's why I say don't assume you are the backbone organization, don't assume you have one in your community. You have to have those conversations and have them early. Second, all about
because
that data.
You know I'm all about that bass, no trouble.
Gotta get that bass line.
About that bass, no trouble. I'm all
All right, actually, I hope it doesn't play again. That's my rule. All right, I just wanted to liven it up a little bit. I love that song. I know it's totally overplayed on the radio, but I love it every time it comes on. It is all about the data, right? Constantly, not just a one-time thing, but using data in lots of ways and referring to it often for continuous improvement. But in the beginning, you absolutely have to get that baseline. You have to determine the size of the population that you're focused on and scope it out, meaning the different characteristics that these youth have. And so we have started that work. You would think in a year and a half we should have all that baseline data work done. We don't, but we've made significant progress. And I would say a word of caution, don't let perfection in data, getting to perfection, cause paralysis. Because if you've done any data work already with disconnected youth, opportunity youth, it's messy. It's not easy to just look up these statistics. The Census Bureau doesn't quite capture it the way we want it. The school districts aren't quite collecting it the way we want it. And so you have to really get in there and see what you got and use what you got. And it's not going to be perfect, but use it to just start looking at trends, get an estimate of the size of the population in your community. And we found in Tucson right now we have about 15,000 16 to 24-year-olds who have disconnected from school and work, and about 5,800, roughly 16 to 19-year-olds who have dropped out of high school, right? That's just that subset. right now, 16 to 19-year-olds. So when you look at the collective population who doesn't have a high school diploma and isn't working, it becomes quite large. We partnered with our Pima County One-Stop Center. They hold all of the Workforce Investment Act dollars and do a great job keeping data, and worked with them to come up with some of these figures. We looked at census data, and I'm going to give you a hint that took us about 1.5 years to find. So if you want a resource and you don't want to pay gobs and gobs of money for really good data, I'm just going to call out my staff right now, our Opportunities Director at United Way, Deborah Garza Chavez. She doesn't know I'm going to do this right now. But she actually came upon a small little company called Qubit. And for about a couple $100, this is unbelievable, really, because we thought we were going to have to pay thousands of dollars. You can have them run American Community Survey data and census data and do the disaggregation for you almost however you want it, and they even have it by census tract. So look up Qubit, and you can talk to Deborah about how you actually find them. It was a gold mine when we realized that, and that's how we started to drill down some of the numbers. And now we're doing a mapping project to actually see where these youth are living according to census tract. We're in the middle of that project right now. Next, about data. There's all kinds of data, right, that you got to look at. So what you have to do, once you have your group together and you have this shared vision about what you want for your community, what you want for your young people, you have to get to a place where, okay, we're going to have common indicators to know how to measure ourselves, hold ourselves accountable for making this progress. And this is, again, not an easy conversation to have. And why is that? Well, I'm just going to say it. Funders drive the conversation. And community-based organizations are beholden to their funders, as are school districts. And funders have a particular way about how they want things measured. And so organizations are measuring so that things a certain way so that they can continue to get their grant funding. So what you have is you have a myriad of different ways of measuring success for young people, measuring different milestones. So it takes a long time, I'm just going to prepare you for that, to get consensus about what you're measuring and how you're going to measure it. And we came up with 8 indicators now that as a collective we're going to hold ourselves accountable to. We're not making every single individual organization responsible for collecting data on all 8 of these indicators, but they're going to be responsible for the ones that fit for them, and our collaborative is going to hold ourselves accountable, if that makes sense. And it was a long process, and so I'll just share with you, we worked with a great evaluation facilitation firm down in Tucson, LaCroix Milligan Associates, and they really helped us have these tough conversations. And they're in the process right now of validating the data that they've been collecting from our over 40+ partners right now, and actually validating, getting a hard number on the number of seats we have in our system for workforce readiness programs, educational programs that serve opportunity youth, and validating that the data we got around success indicators is absolutely true, and that the people have reported it in the same way. We're going to continue doing that process. We also, so that was the organization and school interviews that LaCroix Milligan is doing. And we organized all of our indicators into the 4 areas that are on that big sheet of paper in your folders: re-engagement, educational momentum, career connections, and youth development. And then the other thing we wanted to do is not just have data in the form of statistics, but a lot of qualitative data as well that will help inform our strategies. And so we ran a series of youth focus groups with a variety of different populations: youth who were homeless, youth who were transitioning out of foster care, ran ad hoc groups of youth who had dropped out. And it was really interesting, the things that they came up with. There were common threads among all of those conversations. It didn't seem to matter which group they were in, but this idea that there hadn't been enough caring, supportive adults in their life. Almost all of them had trauma in their backgrounds, lots of trauma, family dysfunction, drug abuse, all kinds of things that keep these youth from being successful. So when I hear educators, politicians say, well, we just need to motivate them. We just need to give them some hope. I think that's a very single focus viewpoint. And I think that that might be the case for some opportunity youth, but really it's about looking holistically at their situations and knowing none of them want to drop out. Not really. They felt they had no other choice. There was no other option for them that they could see because life had just gotten a little too crazy. And it will keep being crazy for a while, even after you reconnect them. And that's why the concept of having re-engagement centers and lots of caring, supportive adults around them and their peers, maybe slightly older than them, who have been through it themselves and are on the track, have to be surrounding them as well. All of that came out of our focus groups. And that's why our community has decided to heavily engage youth in the solution creating process. So where we are with that, I think this is the next slide. No, okay, so I'll talk about that in just a minute. So identify your focus. That's after you have the data collected. I say eat the elephant one bite at a time because it is a huge elephant and you can absolutely get paralyzed and spin your conversations in your collaborative till the end of time with all the myriad of problems and system breakdowns in your community. Look at your data, go back to your data and figure out where is the biggest priority right now. Talk about sequencing your strategies rather than prioritizing. I feel strongly that it all needs to be done, but there needs to be an order to it. Build out of, so our first priority was re-engagement centers. We really, in the true sense of the definition of a re-engagement center, did not have one in Tucson. Lots of programs doing bits and pieces of the work. We had lots of strong work readiness programs, organizations doing internships for youth, career and technical education happening over here, but no one center that was bringing it all together with the support and stabilization services too that often these young people need. And so we said, okay, we're gonna prototype, and we use that word prototype, not pilot, because a pilot might end. We know we're committed to re-engagement centers. We're prototyping our first one. It should open January of next year, of co-locating all of these services, stabilization services, case management, workforce readiness, academic counseling, flexible curriculum and ways to get a high school diploma or a GED if the student is just too old and far off track to graduate on time. All of that happening at one center, and it takes a lot of partners to make that happen. This is not about one agency doing all of the work, but the collective and the community. And we're gonna get that rolling, figure out the bumps in the way. There's gonna be some things that don't work, and young people are gonna tell us what's not working, and we're gonna be very open to listening to them and helping them, have them help us co-create solutions to figure out this work. And once we got that one center working, I have many of my partners in the room, they haven't heard me say this, but my goal is actually to have 6 re-engagement centers in Tucson over the next 10 years. And I really believe strongly that this strategy is working because I've seen it in other communities. So that would be another piece of advice here is if you wanna start doing this work, go to other communities and see stuff that's working in action right now. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Somebody said earlier that, these are great inventors of solutions. I am not an inventor by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a great copycat, really. There are some great people in the room you're gonna hear from later. Kathy Hamilton and Shakima Fillmore-Townsend. Oh my gosh. Really? You wanna pay attention to those ladies. If anybody's an inventor in this room, it is them. And I just copy everything that they do and work with my collaborative to tweak it for our local context. Partner with your workforce investment system. So down in Tucson, we have the Pima County One Stop. They're a great partner helping us with all of this work. And replicate your results after you know that they work. Don't advocate for ideas. Advocate for what works. And you have to go back to the data constantly to see what's working. Okay, then come up with pathways with purpose. And I say, get your dream on paper. And that's what we did with our collaborative. we just started what would be the most ideal situation for young people in our community to have. How would this all flow? And so we started just putting designs on paper, because people in our community, I'm sure everywhere, are very visual. It really helps the conversation move forward if you can get out of just talking, but actually looking at something visual. And they played with it, and now we have a beautiful, colorized, legal-sized spreadsheet of the path that we want for young people. And it has the word draft on the top of it and across the middle of it, and it will stay draft for a very long time, because we are constantly looking at this pathway and adapting it and making different on-ropes and exit ways and ways to get back on for young people, because they do. They get connected, something happens, they have to leave. We want to make it easy for them to come back. We're constantly looking at that. And then partner with business and align with high demand sectors. So we have a great system down in Tucson of workforce development and some businesses that are doing great research in this area. TRIO, the Tucson Regional Economic Opportunities Office, and our Pima County One Stop have really done some great research to identify 6 major industry sectors that need a lot of folks to fill these jobs, and right now they're saying they have the huge skills gap, and there just aren't enough young people or entry-level employees to fill these positions. So that's where the opportunity is, and so we're creating now career tracks and working with our Pima County JTED and our Pima Community College system to make sure that we're developing curriculum that's appropriate and getting young people the credentials that they would need to have them enter these high-demand sectors. And then constantly refer back to your dream pathway on the paper and look what you have and what you don't have and prioritize the gaps. Again, you're not going to be able to take on everything all at once. Pick a couple of things. But again, this is where it's not all kumbaya. It's lots of tough conversations in your community, because everybody has a different idea about what the priorities are. And so we're still going through that down in Tucson and looking at that. And we're going, let's go back to the data. Let's go back to the data. Where are the biggest needs? What are the largest groups of youth? Where are the biggest disparities? And that's how we're going to be making our decisions. And here's that pathway I was talking about. So if you're going to go through the Re-Engagement Center track this afternoon, Deborah is going to talk in depth about how we're developing that Re-Engagement Center, so I'm not going to go into that right now. Just know that there's a lot of partners coming together at the table to make that happen. We have down at the bottom, our pathway is our main referral partners that we are focusing on how we're recruiting youth to the Re-Engagement Center to get connected and then on through the pathway. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't take young people walking in through the doors at the Re-Engagement Center. We know that that's going to happen. But our main referring partners are from the foster care system, the juvenile court system, and other nonprofits working with the disconnected youth population. That first layer, that rectangle, long rectangle, says stabilization services. Not every youth that comes through the doors may need stabilization services, but certainly if they are living on the streets, if they have mental health challenges, if they have a drug addiction problem, we are going to take care of those needs first before we even begin the conversations with them about getting connected to education and work. You've got to make sure that that young person feels safe and has their basic needs taken care of. That's why we partnered with an agency who already has some of these assets in place. They're working with our local community food bank to have a food pantry, a clothing closet. They had already a behavioral health organization coming in to do a mental health counseling with young people. So we just said, hey, you're already doing that. Let's see if we can make that work for the 16 to 19-year-old population and have those services available to them as well. And that was another thing. We narrowed our focus to 16 to 19-year-olds at this stage in the game. Eventually, we will look at the full spectrum from 16 to 24-year-olds. But again, it's about eating that elephant one bite at a time, and that's where we narrowed our focus based on the data. They enter in through the Re-Engagement Center. Once they're stabilized, there will be a myriad of educational opportunities for them as well right away, workforce readiness programs, internships to help them get that purpose right from the get-go. So it's not just book learning. They're going to be offered opportunities to have work based experiences, both paid and non-paid opportunities to help them do that career exploration and right away get that contextualized learning that puts them in the mindset that they are going for post-secondary education. And I'm going to say post-secondary education, not college, not just college. Certainly Pima Community College is at the table with 2-year degrees. We have University of Arizona, the South Campus, that has a great partnership with Pima Community College around articulating those pathways into 4-year degrees. But there's also great apprenticeship programs and career and technical education programs that give youth a credential that has value in the labor market, frankly, for jobs that pay more money than my salary right now. We have some great machinist programs, diesel mechanic programs that don't necessarily require a college degree, but there is definitely some education that's required. And so we're mapping out all of those pathways for young people and working with, again, our one-stop center to make sure that they have access to the supports the WIA dollars, the Workforce Investment Act dollars, give them, so that they have opportunities to get their uniforms paid for, if they need special equipment, goggles, work boots, whatever that is. All of those resources are still available to those youth coming through the Re-Engagement Center. And so that's the gist of our pathway design. So that's really my presentation today. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about involving youth in the process. We were coached from Aspen from the very, very beginning. They came and did a site visit with us, and we had no youth at the table, of course, when we were first putting this together. And they said, you've got to involve youth from the very, very beginning. And so now we're at the stage where we have a youth work group to plan and put together our Youth Leadership Council. Again, this work happens very slowly. We're into it a year and a half, and we have 3 or 4 very committed youth who have lived experience as opportunity youth, who are passionate about getting other youth involved. And so they're building the job descriptions for different officers for the Youth Leadership Council, and we'll be doing a strategic outreach engagement effort to bring more young people to the Youth Leadership Council. And we're paying them, if you can believe that. Where each youth will get a stipend award, and even our current youth on just our working group for it also have monthly bus passes, as we know that transportation is a big obstacle in Tucson. I am sure it is here in the Valley as well. So make sure you are valuing their time and their experience. We all get paid in our jobs, and we want young people to feel valued for their time as well with a monthly stipend. So that is, I have 4 minutes left of my presentation, so there you go, Laura. I've shaved 4 minutes off of my time. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share what we have going on down in Tucson.
All right, 4 minutes, we're almost to lunch. We're that much closer. Amanda called our next presenter the inventor, or at least one of the inventors, as the case may be. Our next speaker is Shakima Fulmer Townsend. She's the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Youth Network. Now, Shakima's used her experience, more than 15 years of experience, with a concentration in research and nonprofit administration, social work foundation, to influence the way that the Philadelphia Youth Network views its decision-making process and its work. And we were talking about the fact that the program down in Tucson's been going on for a year. It's been going on much longer than that in Philadelphia. And listen to some of these numbers. Since 1999, Philadelphia Youth Network has placed more than 92,000 youths in jobs. They've raised more than $10 million for internships. They've partnered with 130 different organizations, and they've reconnected more than 7,300 out-of-school youth with education and workplace experience. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the inventors, Shakima Fulmer Townsend, with some of those success stories.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. I would say that I had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Covey and his staff yesterday, and I will call them from this point forward our Makisa family, because we really do believe it takes family in order to do this work, and you learn to work together very well with your friends across the country in order to achieve the scale of success that we are trying for our cities, but more importantly for every young person that we come into contact with. This is about work with individuals, And I am going to share with you our backbone journey. Amanda got us started with a little overview of collective impact and speaking very clearly about how it's developing in Tucson, but we are going to really dig deeper into two areas. One, what it really means to be a backbone, and two, what it really means to maintain and sustain collective impact. So you heard a little bit about the fact that we've been doing this work for a little between 8 and 10 years, quite frankly, which you might say to yourself, we just started talking about collective impact a year and a half, 2 years ago, so how have you been doing this? The reality is we have been working together in partnership with cross-sector bodies in Philadelphia for a really long time. And what that means for us is that we've learned a lot along the way, and I would say you can't make all the mistakes yourself, so benefit from our learning journey. And also what it means is that you have to be really creative about keeping people at the table and also keeping the problem focal. So I'm going to share with you some examples of how we've been able to do that. It's important to note that we have a real unique opportunity in this country right now. And that is as attention draws really focused narrowly on opportunity youth, formerly disconnected youth, and quite frankly, I still sit in some very tough debates about which term is the most appropriate and why you want to either use a value-added or what appears to be not as value-added term. Quite frankly, it's about keeping the pressure on. So choose what works and what resonates for you and your community, but I think the most important thing is not to forget that this particular population is a great asset to our local communities. They are a part of who we are, and their potential, quite frankly, is very real. And so I think one of the things that's more important is not so much about what you call them, but what you do with them and on behalf of them. And I started out with them because, you know, one of the staff people yesterday said, not about us, without us. Here's the reality. These are people. We are all people. And if you think about yourself, you probably don't like it when things happen to you, right? And so when you come to work and somebody tells you about a change that you had no input on, you probably usually don't like that. And the same is true for the young people that we worked with. They don't like to be labeled without their consent. They don't like to have strategies that don't really work for them. They don't like to have people who don't know what it's like to be them developing what would be the solution for them. So it's really important to engage young people authentically, and that actually might make some of us adults a little uncomfortable because we all like our letters, we like our acronyms, we love our language, right? And so the more the better. The bigger words we put into a sentence, the more intelligent we often feel. And we really need to think about, if we want authentic engagement for young people, how we prepare them to enter the conversation as equals so that their voice is not only heard, but they understand the conversations that are happening around them and they can participate eloquently and impactfully. And that takes adults being a little bit different in the space. So that's one nugget before we even jump into it. So let's have a little, I think I'm pressing, okay, there we go. So I started out with the thing I'm most passionate about, and we will be curious to see how competent I am because I'm gonna try to shave some time off as well. And I've never talked about anything I'm passionate about in less than 20 minutes, so we're gonna see how good I become today. I feel really fortunate to lead the Philadelphia Youth Network for one reason in particular, and that is that we have been privileged to maintain and sustain two collective impact approaches where young people remain at the center. And I can tell you the moment that you take young people away from the center is the first step to a road of real bad outcomes. And so young people have to be the driving force for all your actions. Now, you see this lovely circle here. We are also fortunate to have great actors across sectors, right? Philanthropy, government, school, nonprofit organizations, young people, youth serving systems. The challenge to that is that as the connector or as the backbone, we have to create linkages where sometimes nobody else sees them. So I would say advice number one, don't be afraid to be the only person in the room that sees how it all fits together. Because people are coming and they're participating with their identity, with their organizational values and perspectives, and guess what? My experience is sometimes they're not the same. And so while we keep young people at the center, when you're working across disciplines, some people see a student, others see a youth offender, others see a participant, others see the potential, and as the backbone, it is our job to see how all the perspectives connect on behalf of young people. And sometimes, as some people can say, it seems like a vision, and other times it seems like a hallucination. You have to be confident enough that you can actually paint that picture for folks and help people to see their brushstroke in the larger picture while keeping the central focus, which is young people. So this is a picture of our lovely team, and there's probably about 55 to 60 people standing in this picture. And I love this picture for a couple of reasons. The first is that it really takes a lot of people to make this happen. And I think the idea of the backbone organization is so attractive, right? And you think, we're just gonna find some people who could just pull us together and make this work. I wish it was just that simple, if like only 5 people did that. The reality is, it takes a lot of people doing a lot of different things in order to make the backbone effective. So while not all 55 of these people work in a collective impact space, I think one of the things that makes the Philadelphia Youth Network unique is that we also have strong ties with our youth-serving organizations, and we function as a place of management for those strategies. And so we get to hear very directly what works on the ground and what does not. And it allows us to do something very special, which is actually connect policy and practice in real ways so that they work on the ground. For us, collaboration is really how we do business. We have to live, eat, sleep, and breathe it. But if you promise not to tell the people in Philadelphia, I'll tell you a secret about it. So everybody, pinky promise, right? I got my, in a sign of solidarity, I need those pinkies, right? And Laura McHugh, who's here with me, one of my staff people who's been in this work for several years, has already been sworn to secrecy. So here's the secret. It's not easy. In fact, I would argue that it's probably the hardest thing I do every single day, both in the organization and externally from the organization. And here's why. When you get along with folks, right, when you think alike, when there's synergy, collaboration is fairly easy. It sort of goes like this. Oh yeah, this is a great idea. Yes, it's a great idea. Here's what I can do. Here's what you can do. We could do this together. Sounds great. You're like high five, you're energetic, you leave. Right? You feel like you're about to rule the world together. However, the reality is that in times of conflict, did she just say that about young people? I can't believe they work this way. Why are they so disorganized? It becomes real hard to collaborate because you have to start finding the strength in the differences, right? And you have to learn to really appreciate unique vantage points, which probably means not only do they not think like you, they don't agree with you. It's also really difficult in confusion. Mayor said this, superintendent said this, my boss said this, none of the this is the same thing, and I'm not sure they even talk to each other. I'm sure, this only happens in Philadelphia, it doesn't happen here, I'm sure. I'm sure it doesn't happen here, but here's what I know to be true about being the backbone. It is your job to be a really great listener, and not just of the things that are said. It's the body language. It's the person you haven't seen at 2 meetings because they mad. And they're really actually angry, and you're gonna have to do some work to re-energize them, to de-escalate them, but also to refocus them on the central point, right, which is the young person. And so I will tell you, it's probably inevitable that you're going to have what I like to call the hashtag epic fail moments, right? Where you feel like, what just happened at this meeting and how are we going to get it back on track? You need a lot of patience, but also persistence and resilience. And how much of that process is exactly like the ingredients our young people need to succeed. So whenever I am extremely frustrated with the adults, we have our Work Ready collaborative, and often I often work with a bunch of non-work ready adults too. And on any given day, you might find me not so work ready as well because I'm more frustrated than I am productive. And that's a real vulnerability of leadership, right? But I think one of the important things that I remind myself is that I have to be who we say we are. And if I believe in the potential of young people, and I believe that resilience is possible, and I believe that with the right supports and services and cheering on adults, that young people can actually not just reconnect back to school, because that's sort of like the base principle, right? Get back in school. Great. We actually want them to thrive and be able to navigate their world so that they make the best decisions for themselves. And if I believe that that can happen, then that means I have to check my behavior often, and also try and go back to those tough moments and revisit them in a way that promotes the next level of achievement. So let's talk about what we do, right? And some 4 concrete functions that I will illuminate for you. So the first is convene. And the convening piece starts with a word that I think we all love. It's called intention. So before you even bring the players in the room, there's a lot of work that actually has to happen. You have to be clear about what you want from people. You have to be clear about the ultimate goal. And what I like to say is you need to know your champions, but you also need to know your naysayers, or as young people would say, your haters. I love them both. I don't care if you're a champion or not. What I care about is that you share a similar vision with us about the possibilities for young people. And that might mean that I spend a little bit more time with the people who are your, what I'll call wild cards, because I want to understand their thinking process better. And really where there's disconnect really means that there's probably a lack of understanding. So I start out with the principle that everybody is actually here for the same reasons. We all actually want the same things, and sometimes you have to check that, so you might want to run down your list to make sure that you actually want the same things. And that it's just really about me understanding a little bit better how you think, and then tailoring the approach or conversation to multiple ways of thinking, because the beauty is in the dissonance. And quite frankly, the fact that everybody thinks differently is probably where you're going to get a really strong resolution. But that takes a real skill to facilitate and work through. But it's not just about convening players. It's also about reimagining money. So quite frankly, Dr. Covey said yesterday, which I thought was so spot on, that finding the money is one challenge, finding the human capacity is equally challenging, if not sometimes more challenging. The reality is we both need financial resources. You need the leaders to be actors and ardent champions. You also need the agendas to align in a way that's actually productive and moves you forward. And you might need to actually reimagine how you're using existing money as opposed to only focusing on attracting new resources. I often say with Work Ready Philadelphia, if money was our only problem, we would have solved this a long time ago. It really is about capacity. It's about building a city full of caring adults who want to share their experiences with young people. It's about making sure that they feel comfortable in engaging with young people and interacting with them in a learning environment. It's about transforming your workplace to a place where young people can learn and grow, which might mean they show up at your meeting and do something that you really wouldn't expect in a professional environment. That's not a point to fire them. It's actually a point to educate them. And the same is true in our Project U-Turn work. When you run into young people who face challenges, Their circumstances should certainly not be the defining characteristic, and it should not limit them. And so as opposed to looking at all the challenges that they face, it's equally important to see their assets and to help them become navigators, if you will, in resolving those challenges. And oftentimes we get so sidetracked with the systemic barriers, the financial barriers. Some of their history can be really challenging. That is not who they are. That is an experience that they had. Who they are lies in what they want for themselves. And if we continue to ask ourselves that question, what do you want for yourself? We could be value added as adults on the journey for them to get there. Talking about connection. So I said already, don't be afraid to see you being the only person who sees how it all works together. There are some core values in our organization that really help us to be focused on connection. The first, and there's a theory of change. We actually believe change happens in the community. So we don't enter the room ever as the experts on anything. In fact, it's overwhelming for me for people to say we're the innovators, we're the experts. It's like, oh, they're talking about us. We see ourselves as learners and partners with the community. And we also believe that they know a whole lot more about what's going to work best in their communities than we do. And so not only do we value that expertise, but we uplift it. We sort of seek it out first before anything happens. And connecting systems is the same way. I may not always look at young people the same way as our juvenile justice system looks at them. In fact, another secret, I'm usually quite uncomfortable when I have to go in the room with the JJ folks because they come with their badges on. I feel like they're gonna arrest me in any moment. And I almost wanna disarm them at all times and say, like, listen, it's just a meeting. Nothing else is happening. You can take that badge off. But I recognize that it's their culture. And so I've learned to just take deep breaths when I see them coming in droves. But one of the things that I know is important to getting this work done is for us to bridge that gap. And so I have to sit in my discomfort in order to understand their perspective and also help to introduce them to some new ideas locally so that we could work more effectively on behalf of our juvenile justice population. And that's just one example. The same is true for child welfare. Sometimes the same is true for schools. I'm like, is this what's happening every day? I had no idea. So it's also about being okay with what you know and what you don't know, and being comfortable enough to ask questions in a way that really is about learning. So there's little judgment in the question. If I ask the question, it's usually because I don't understand, and I actually have a true and authentic desire to understand. But convening and connecting are just two of the functions. For us, our core values are collaboration, excellence, innovation, respect, and responsibility. Those are the principles that guide us. So in those times of confusion and conflict that I talked about, when it's really difficult to collaborate sometimes or convene, we have to go back to the touch point often to say, okay, did I pursue excellence? How did this work out for me? Was I respectful? Was I responsible with the authority given to me in the facilitator space? Where did I actually misstep? And to be fiercely committed to that process, we debrief everything. It's almost like mini therapy after every meeting. But the important thing is to learn and grow. And so to build that time as a backbone is really important. The focus on learning is central, it's core for who we are as an organization. So the other two things that we do as a backbone is that we measure. And Amanda talked about getting that baseline data and sort of, it's all about the data. I love the song. I'm going to be playing that in my head all day. It's also about using the data as instruction and not punishment. And I say that really, it's one of the most important perspectives or shifts you could have in this work, because when you use the data as punitive, people get defensive. When you use the data as a place of learning, it becomes something that we can all connect to. And the data has real strong power and bringing people together. Because one of the things I've learned is that people don't truly argue with the numbers. So when you make it about the scale, when you make it about what's happening in your community, it becomes a very different conversation than what you as an individual entity is doing to contribute to the problem. And I think the article where you're rated #1 in the most disconnected cities is a sobering data point, but it also was unifying, right? And you could choose to be paralyzed by that data, or you could choose to be motivated. By the fact that this is the second summit, I see that here you've chosen to be motivated, and that power exists every time you convene people. You can choose to see the data as a point of paralysis, or you could choose to say this is our current truth. This is not the reality we will accept, and here's what we're going to do together to get there. And lastly, the sustaining part, which is probably a lot, has to do with how are you engaging proactively with policy development? What are you doing to create political champions that understand not only your complex social problem, but understand that you in the community are an asset to the solution? So a lot of it looks like getting invited to the table. Sometimes the conversations are happening and you didn't even know. The true mark is when you become more engaged, when you're seen as a resource, as a place where your finger is on the pulse, and what you're bringing to the table actually leads to the results in policy. But it's also about money. And so the reality is, Amanda said it very eloquently, funders are controlling the conversations, but funders are being more open. So I would suggest that there's a paradigm shift we can all take on. What would happen in the world if we actually told funders what we wanted to measure? And what would happen if we collectively as a nation, as a country, push back and say, these are the things that matter to us, and we understand that this is where you're going, this is where we are. So I would encourage us to think a little bit differently about the things we measure. And I would say what you measure, you change. So think very clearly about what you want to change and measure those things that will help you get there. We talked a lot about the 5 ingredients of collective impact, and for the sake of time, I won't belabor this, but I will say a couple of things about the backbone's function as it relates to the 5 conditions. Having a backbone is critical, and I would say that you not only should you not assume that you have a backbone, you should really assess what you're looking for and what's going to be value added in your community in order to facilitate productive conversations. What's the stance of that organization? How do they learn, and how do they share what they learn regularly with the community is probably some important litmus tests for you as you think about who may become the backbone here. The shared vision is really equally critical, and it's not just about the common understanding of the problem, it's also about a common approach, and it's defining your complex social problem. So as collective impact gains steam across the country, you will hear a lot of people saying that they're doing it, and I would say use your critical eyes, because not everybody who says they're doing it is actually doing it. And I think collective impact, I said this to John Kenya, one of the founders of the approach, is deceptively simple. It is a framework for managing in complexity. And so the reality is you got to get down in those details to really be sure that you're not only beginning at a collective impact approach, but that you're also maintaining and sustaining it. Shared measurement, critical. Picking the same things, measuring it the same way, creating a language that you can use as a community is really important. But equally important is actually having activities that work together and not against each other. So don't assume that all activities and partners are mutual, their activities are actually mutually reinforcing. In fact, I'll share briefly, in Philadelphia, one of the things that we noticed is that our family court system, the judges were actually administering sentencing very differently. And that was actually causing an increase in our dropout rate because they were actually placing more young people in out-of-home care, or out-of-home placement, depending on what courtroom you were in. And it took a lot of leadership for us to really say, this is actually a contributory situation, not actually helping the problem. We need to do something about this particularly, and I'm happy to report that now we've actually gained some parity in the approach, and actually all of those types of cases go to one courtroom, and that Judge Doherty, who I can't take credit for, has actually required all advocates to refer to young people in their courtroom not as defendants, but as my child, changed the whole tone of how they approach the sentencing. So that's something small. It actually didn't cost that much money. It was just a little bit of operational reorganization and a choice that he would use his bully pulpit to actually influence change. So when we talk about Project U-Turn, I'm charged to share with you some of our successes, and I'm gonna move closer to where we are today. When we started out, half of our 9th graders were not graduating, and that was the sobering fact. And quite frankly, that was amounting to about 30,000 young people a year. just leaving school, and we're not sure where they ended up. Fast forward, we really had to do a couple of things. One, we had to understand the scale and scope of the problem. Two, we had to create a set of data where everybody could see what the problem was, actually agree that it was a problem, and then decide that they wanted to actually be a part of the solution. We also had to create a no-blame space, because it's easy to point at the school district and say that they are culpable and responsible and sort of chiefly should be the leaders. But the reality is we didn't really start with one person causing the problem, and it was going to actually take all of us to make a difference. Then we had to identify what strategies would work better. And that required bringing together a diverse set of people thinking about what they could do from where they sit in order to achieve the goals. And getting the right people at the table really was not the easiest thing to do at first, because people were skeptical of each other. People had long-standing beef, and you really didn't know. It was like, oh, wow, you don't talk to them at all because X. What would happen if we just choose to move forward? Like, I get it, we're never gonna change X. It happened years ago, and quite frankly, I could spend my time doing that, but I would love to talk about the solution and moving forward and getting people to a space of comfort where they were willing to let go of their history in order to attain a brighter reality was something that we focused intently on and spent hours of meetings thinking through what the rules of engagement were. So another point I would say is spend time with your stakeholders, really establishing a core set of rules that everybody can agree to. So where are we today? A couple of successes that we've had in Project U-Turn. One, our graduation rate has increased from 52% to 64%. And when I'm home, I say, woohoo, go Philadelphia. Good job, everybody, because everybody wants to feel like what they're doing actually matters. When I'm not home, I tell people how I really feel about it, which is this. Great progress, happy, patting ourselves on the back, but we got so far to go. We don't have time to rest on our laurels. And if you need a lot of that, this is probably not the collective impact approach for you, because we actually still have to roll up our sleeves and do some work. So the sobering reality is that while we've made great progress over the years, we still lag behind our state average and our national average, which is about 83 and 86% relatively. Now, quite frankly, I think great systemic reform has happened in that we've created more opportunities. So one of the key problems we had was that there wasn't enough places for people to go, even if they wanted to reconnect. We had one of the first re-engagement centers in the country, quite frankly, and that we were able to go first and like learn a lot about that, but the place of centralized connection is really important. Having different strategies, which we learn a lot from our folks in Boston, also matters because the population is not homogenous. So if there was one reason people would disconnect, we'd have one silver bullet and then it would be done. But it's really not one. Every person is unique, and so we have to be able to tailor our approach to young people. We also had to focus on the system, because scale was not going to be achieved by one program alone or one person alone. It was going to be achieved when we went after those intersections and systems that would create change. And for us, that looks like our Department of Human Services creating an education support center, because they realized that transition in foster care was contributing to the problem. And so if a young person has moved 4 or 5 times and been in 4 or 5 different schools in a year, educational momentum is kind of hard to sustain when that is your reality. We also are very sensitive to trauma-informed care and are actually creating a culture in our city where young people where adults are getting trained on mental health first aid. So all the adults are going to be able to, we have a campaign going where they'll be able to assess young people and understand when they're in trouble, when they're in more trouble than a social support will help, when they need some specialized care. And that was another point of intervention. So we went after systemic reforms. And I think the other thing is that we focused intently on what resources were going to make a difference. And so I'm actually really proud of the fact that we've leveraged, and when I say leverage, that means blending different dollars. It also means imagining old dollars in new ways and attracting new resources. Over $200 million towards the Project U-Turn initiative. For Work Ready, we have some similar statistics, and I won't run through them because in the introduction he shared some of them with you all, but I think the same problem persists. It is about our complex social problem is creating a system of preparation for young people. It is about giving them the opportunity to apply what they learn and to gain core 21st century workforce skills. And we do that by bringing employers and schools and community-based organizations together to say, what can we do individually in order to create this system of preparation? I am going to just fast forward to recap some of the lessons that we have learned. And so the reality is spending some time on adult capacity is important. So don't assume that the adults in your system actually know how to do this work well. Spend time actually training and thinking about what the learning agenda is. And some of it can be small scale, like communities of practice. Just bringing adults together who are in different disciplines and hearing from them directly about what it would take to do this work well is extremely powerful. And some of those solutions are what have fueled our work today. Also, making sure that you are good stewards, and that means reporting as you go against how the investment is working, including the things that are not working so well. There is real power in transparency. I would also say that it's important to not focus on credibility, but focus on credit. So sometimes that means who is the best champion, who has the better relationship, who is better positioned to carry this water, which might not be you. And sometimes you got to be okay with the fact that it's not you who is leading the cause, but that you're influencing and supporting those who can do it best. I already said to share all of your work. I also say respect the expertise. Quite frankly, if we could all do each other's jobs, we wouldn't need differentiated titles. We just have the role of job person, and it would work out just well. The reality is people spend a lot of time doing this work to amass a certain level of expertise, and it's valuable. Whether you agree with it or not, it's valuable. And if you take the time to learn from each other, I promise you that you will keep coming back to the table. And the last is build your champions, because those are the people who are going to say what you need them to say when you're not in the room. And that's equally as important as when you are in the room. And so finding out who has an authentic passion for serving disconnected youth is really, really important, because that means that their word will live longer than you may be in business doing this work and longer than you may be present for the conversation. I will end with this. It takes a long time to do this work. So eat up, folks. Get your weight up, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it because this is not a short battle. This is not for the faint or the weak at heart. We're talking about transforming the lives of young people. We're talking about changing systems in ways that they will work more efficiently. And we all know in our own reflections of change and growth that it is not always the easiest thing to do. So make it your habit to constantly reassess and commit to the slow and sometimes painful process of growth. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it has changed my life to be a part of this work. And if you are open to it, I promise you that working together will help you change yours. So thank you.
You know, it's amazing what you can learn in 20 minutes. 28 minutes of passion. One thing I learned is I'm never going to stand between Shakima and anything. I would never get in her way. We're going to take a quick break. I think we're going to make it about a 10-minute break rather than 15-minute break, so we can try to get ourselves back on time a little bit more, which means we're closer to lunch, always important. So take about a quick 10-minute break, grab a snack, and come back in.
Tonight's edition of Arizona Giving and Leading looks at the nation's first social service agency designed to help American Indians living in urban areas. Producer Christina Estes reports that the Phoenix Indian Center opened downtown in 1947, and while the center has since moved to a larger building, its mission remains the same.
Along Central Avenue, north of Indian School Road, is a structure built on cultural respect.
We never forget where we come from. So whenever we introduce ourselves, we introduce, where we're originally from. I am Deborah Nez. My clans are Edgewater, Barnford, within his Clover clan, and I am originally from Steamboat, Arizona, and that's how I am as a woman.
Deborah Nez brings her son Jaron to the Phoenix Indian Center for Navajo singing classes.
When I was little, I started singing when I was 4 years old.
Jaron started singing when his grandmother became ill. 4 years later, he honors her memory by learning more songs.
Whoa, and this is the chanting part. So the real words should not get all the way around me. Shiza.
We were founded in 1947 and really founded during that time of the federal government's policy of Indian relocation. They took Native people from reservations, moved them to one of the 5 relocation cities farthest away, with the thought and the idea that they would then assimilate, become part of the overall population, and not actually make their way back to the reservation.
Language barriers, discrimination, and homesickness left many Native people struggling. The center offered a place to make cultural connections and help finding jobs.
When you're on a reservation, you usually know where to go get services. It's going to be somewhere around the tribal offices. That's where most all of the human services and employment services exist. When you move to Phoenix, it's a little like the big bad wolf. You've got to go find it somewhere.
How are you doing your job searching?
Workforce development remains a heavy focus today because so many people move to Phoenix for jobs. That's what attracted Deborah's family. But she doesn't want the distance to dilute her Navajo roots.
I was growing up, and my grandparents and my parents always told me, as you grow up and, don't matter how old you are, always have a song with you, even one song, a prayer, even one word, like just say one word and one song that will protect you from wherever you're going. That's very important to us is, to learn and to know at least one song.
The center aims to preserve the past while preparing for the future.
We get the T-shirts delivered and taken care of, and then we can be ready for Youth Leadership Day.
Chief Operating Officer Karen Thorne says more Arizona tribes now offer more career opportunities.
There is the need for more skilled and educated people on the reservations to conduct not only the gaming enterprises, but the revenue from gaming that is been pumped into the various tribal infrastructures, upgraded housing programs, upgrading schools, upgrading their hospital and healthcare services, the youth services.
It's one reason Chief Executive Officer Patty Hibbler says they're investing in young people. The center plans to open its own charter high school within the next 3 years.
When you look at the statistics for American Indians in public schools or education, K through 12 education, in Arizona, we continue to still have the highest dropout rate. We have the lowest college going rate. What we find with our Native population is they get lost in the school system. They get completely lost. Many of our children are, I think it's part of our, a quality of a.
Tonight's edition of Arizona Leading looks at
the Arizona Business and Education Coalition is working to develop a college and career-ready Arizona, and we're proud to be part of American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
In Arizona, 85% of quality jobs will require some form of post-secondary education. Unfortunately, only 75% of students graduate from high school, and of those who do graduate, more than half lack the academic proficiency to be accepted into an Arizona public university. Together, let's make it happen.
A strong education system makes for a strong Arizona and a strong America. Stop Bullying AZ promotes environments that foster the health, well-being, and academic success of all children, so we are proud to support Arizona PBS and the American Graduate Project. Stopping bullying is everyone's responsibility, and so is promoting graduation.
I'm Amy Armstrong with Support My Club. We're here to connect our communities with the needs of high school clubs and teams. Students who spend time on campus doing something they love with a club sponsor or coach who cares about them are more engaged and more likely to graduate. We believe in Arizona high school students and know that when properly equipped, they're able to pursue their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We are proud to be a part of American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
Latinos are the fastest growing group in Arizona, and our state's future is dependent on their success.
Degree Phoenix is a multi-sector collaboration focused on Latino student success. We are working together to increase the percentage of Latinos who complete a college education. Degree Phoenix is proud to support Arizona PBS's American Graduate Project. We are a community committed to college completion. Together, let's make it happen.
Hi, we're Elevate Phoenix. We're proud to support American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
We deliver long-term, life-changing relationships with urban youth in public schools through accredited classes.
With 24/7 mentoring year-round.
Preparing us to graduate and go to college.
To get great jobs and give back to others.
And become people of character.
We're Elevate Phoenix, and we are future graduates.
Measure of America study indicates that in the 25 largest metropolitan areas in the U.S., 1 in 7 youth aged between 16 and 24 are disconnected from education, without a high school diploma or a GED certificate. In Phoenix, the numbers are worse. When broken down by ethnicity for Latinos and African Americans, the ratio is 1 in 4. Genesis City proudly supports American Graduate Day and encourages students and families to utilize resources at the Burton Barr Library to re-engage in education. Measure of America study indicates that in the 25 largest metropolitan areas in the U.S., 1 in 7 youth aged between 16 and 24 are disconnected from education, without a high school diploma or a GED certificate. In Phoenix, the numbers are worse. When broken down by ethnicity for Latinos and African Americans, the ratio is 1 in 4. Genesis City proudly supports American Graduate Day and encourages students and families to utilize resources at the Burton Barr Library to re-engage in education.
Helios Education Foundation proudly celebrates 10 years of working to change lives through education in the states of Arizona and Florida. We know that Arizona's future economic prosperity is tied to the educational success of every student in classrooms across the state today. With the help of our visionary partners and your continued engagement in education, we look forward to a future where every student is prepared to not only compete, but succeed in the 21st century global economy.
At Intel, we're working to ensure that all students graduate from high school ready for college and careers, so Arizona has the workforce it needs. But last year, a quarter of high school students failed to graduate on time.
Those who drop out often experience lower earnings, poorer health, and limited civic engagement.
By working together, we can help more kids graduate so they can get the jobs they want and strengthen Arizona's economy.
Intel is proud to support American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
1 in 5 Arizona high school students will drop out. And when students drop out, we all miss out. That's why Arizona PBS is proud to be a part of American Graduate Day. Together, we're making it happen.
The Southwestern Institute for the Education of Native Americans works to develop healthy, highly educated, informed, and productive Native American leaders at home, at school, and in the community through culturally rich programs.
Sienna is proud to partner with 8, Arizona PBS for the American Graduate Project. Together, let's make it happen.
We are Social Venture Partners Arizona.
We represent a group of committed philanthropists dedicated to making Arizona better through one of the best ways we know how, education.
We're here to affirm our pledge to support education in Arizona with the hopes that together we can produce more graduates and prepare more of our students for college and career.
Students, know that there are people in the community who are rooting for you and your success. And educators, know that leaders are here to support you every step of the way.
Thank you.
Stand for Children believes that education is the key that unlocks the door to success. Far too many children, through no fault of their own, aren't getting the education they need to make it in life. Stand for Children Arizona is passionately committed to righting this wrong, and we're proud to stand with Arizona PBS on the American Graduate Project. Together, we can make it happen.
The Arizona Business and Education Coalition is working to develop a college and career-ready Arizona, and we're proud to be part of American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
In Arizona, 85% of quality jobs will require some form of post-secondary education. Unfortunately, only 75% of students graduate from high school, and of those who do graduate, more than half lack the academic proficiency to be accepted into an Arizona public university. Together, let's make it happen.
A strong education system makes for a strong Arizona and a strong America. Stop Bullying AZ promotes environments that foster the health, well-being, and academic success of all children, so we are proud to support Arizona PBS and the American Graduate Project. Stopping bullying is everyone's responsibility, and so is promoting graduation.
I'm Amy Armstrong with Support My Club. We're here to connect our communities with the needs of high school clubs and teams. Students who spend time on campus doing something they love with a club sponsor or coach who cares about them are more engaged and more likely to graduate. We believe in Arizona high school students and know that when properly equipped, they're able to pursue their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We are proud to be a part of American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
Latinos are the fastest growing group in Arizona, and our state's future is dependent on their success. Degree Phoenix is a multi-sector collaboration focused on Latino student success. We are working together to increase the percentage of Latinos who complete a college education. Degree Phoenix is proud to support Arizona PBS's American Graduate Project.
We are a community committed to college completion. Together, let's make it happen. Hi, we're Elevate Phoenix.
We're proud to support American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
We deliver long-term, life-changing relationships with urban youth in public schools through accredited classes.
With 24/7 mentoring year-round.
Preparing us to graduate and go to college.
To get great jobs and give back to others.
And become people of character.
We're Elevate Phoenix, and we are future graduates.
Measure of America study indicates that in the 25 largest metropolitan areas in the U.S., 1 in 7 youth aged between 16 and 24 are disconnected from education, without a high school diploma or a GED certificate. In Phoenix, the numbers are worse. When broken down by ethnicity for Latinos and African Americans, the ratio is 1 in 4. Genesis City proudly supports American Graduate Day and encourages students and families to utilize resources at the Burton Barr Library to re-engage in education. Measure of America study indicates that in the 25 largest metropolitan areas in the U.S., 1 in 7 youth aged between 16 and 24 are disconnected from education, without a high school diploma or a GED certificate. In Phoenix, the numbers are worse. When broken down by ethnicity for Latinos and African Americans, the ratio is 1 in 4. Genesis City proudly supports American Graduate Day and encourages students and families to utilize resources at the Burton Barr Library to re-engage in education.
Helios Education Foundation proudly celebrates 10 years of working to change lives through education in the states of Arizona and Florida. We know that Arizona's future economic prosperity is tied to the educational success of every student in classrooms across the state today. With the help of our visionary partners and your continued engagement in education, we look forward to a future where every student is prepared to not only compete, but succeed in the 21st century global economy.
At Intel, we're working to ensure that all students graduate from high school ready for college and careers, so Arizona has the workforce it needs. But last year, a quarter of high school students failed to graduate on time.
Those who drop out often experience lower earnings, poorer health, and limited civic engagement.
By working together, we can help more kids graduate so they can get the jobs they want and strengthen Arizona's economy.
Intel is proud to support American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
1 in 5 Arizona high school students will drop out. And when students drop out, we all miss out. That's why Arizona PBS is proud to be a part of American Graduate Day. Together, we're making it happen.
The Southwestern Institute for the Education of Native Americans works to develop healthy, highly educated, informed, and productive Native American leaders at home, at school, and in the community through culturally rich programs.
Sienna is proud to partner with 8, Arizona PBS for the American Graduate Project. Together, let's make it happen.
We are Social Venture Partners Arizona.
We represent a group of committed philanthropists dedicated to making Arizona better through one of the best ways we know how, education.
We're here to affirm our pledge to support education in Arizona with the hopes that together we can produce more graduates and prepare more of our students for college and career.
Students, know that there are people in the community who are rooting for you and your success. And educators, know that leaders are here to support you every step of the way.
Thank you.
Stand for Children believes that education is the key that unlocks the door to success. Far too many children, through no fault of their own, aren't getting the education they need to make it in life. Stand for Children Arizona is passionately committed to righting this wrong, and we're proud to stand with Arizona PBS on the American Graduate Project. Together, we can make it happen.
The Arizona Business and Education Coalition is working to develop a college and career-ready Arizona, and we're proud to be part of American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
In Arizona, 85% of quality jobs will require some form of post-secondary education. Unfortunately, only 75% of students graduate from high school, and of those who do graduate, more than half lack the academic proficiency to be accepted into an Arizona public university. Together, let's make it happen.
A strong education system makes for a strong Arizona and a strong America. Stop Bullying AZ promotes environments that foster the health, well-being, and academic success of all children, so we are proud to support Arizona PBS and the American Graduate Project. Stopping bullying is everyone's responsibility, and so is promoting graduation.
I'm Amy Armstrong with Support My Club. We're here to connect our communities with the needs of high school clubs and teams. Students who spend time on campus doing something they love with a club sponsor or coach who cares about them are more engaged and more likely to graduate. We believe in Arizona high school students and know that when properly equipped, they're able to pursue their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We are proud to be a part of American Graduate Day on Arizona PBS.
We're going to be talking about data this morning. Our next presenter is Kathy Hamilton. Kathy is the Youth Transition Director for the Boston Private Industry Council. She works to build systems that promote successful transitions to education and employment for struggling and disconnected youth. Kathy has been leading the Boston Youth Transition Task Force for the last 10 years, and this group has contributed to a substantial improvement in both local and state dropout rates. Today, Kathy once again is going to be discussing the data-driven approaches, policy recommendations, and lessons learned that led to the creation of a nationally recognized re-engagement center, which has served nearly 3,000 youth since 2009. So please welcome from Boston, Kathy Hamilton.
That's great. He got everybody quieted down for us. Hope you had a good break. Kathy Hamilton from Boston, and I work for the PIC, which is an intermediary workforce board. We got involved in this because we felt like in our state, particularly everywhere, nowadays you need an education to get a job, and not just high school, but really college. So we're all in, and we have been for years, 20, 30 years, but we've been working on this project for 10 years. And, you know, after listening to Shakima and Amanda, I felt like, I thought back to this weekend when I live in Massachusetts, but I was in Vermont. I'm trying to see how many states I can get into in 5 days. And Vermont, it's harvest time, it's foliage time. There's pumpkins and gourds and mums everywhere. And, you know, on my way back, I was visiting a friend who has cancer, and I'm trying to cheer her up. So I get this idea. I said, I want to recreate this environment in her backyard. So I'm at the farmer's market and at the store, and pretty soon I'm driving down 89 and 93 with like probably 100 pounds of produce that no one will eat, like, you know, Indian corn or Native American corn and pumpkins and gourds all in my back seat. And I had this moment of thinking, are you crazy? You know, what if she doesn't like this? You know, that hallucination vision moment that Shakima talked about. And I said, well, no going back now. I got this stuff. And I got to her house and she was out. She felt well enough to be out on an errand with a friend. And her husband was there, and he's a genius with landscaping and tools. So within like 10 minutes, we had put together this whole kind of corner of her yard that looked like the harvest. And she came back and she started crying. She was so touched. And, you know, I kind of feel like I had this moment of feeling like we're feeding you from a fire hose. You know, we're rolling in like the big pumpkins from Boston and Philadelphia, even though Boston's a much smaller pumpkin than Philadelphia. And, you know, here we are giving you all kinds of information to take in and hoping that you will be able to, because it's very important, I think, to motivate all of you to get to those young people. I think you're the ones that are touching them. And I have to say, I'm very humbled by being here, because when we started working on the dropout issue in Boston, we did not have a room this big. You know, we had like 20 people around a conference room table, and it grew, and we have rooms this big sometimes, but this is really impressive. And I feel like sitting here has really helped me recommit to our work. Because, you know, we all have our bad moments, like everyone has chronicled. So that said, I'm going to persist, and hopefully you'll find something to take out of it. I'm going to probably go more in the way of telling you the story of what happened in Boston, because I think what you definitely should come away with today is you may not be perfect, but if you get together and get a plan and start working on it, you're going to have an impact. And I think at first, sometimes it's hard to believe that, but seeing all these different examples maybe will help you see it's not because Philadelphia is special and they've got PIN and all this money they pulled in and Shakima. It's not because Boston's special. It's not because Tucson's special. It's because we worked at it and we had a plan. And I think if you do that too, you'll have a great impact. So Pinink, we're also an intermediary, and we have that broker, connect, convene, measure. And this project got us to add one. You can see we have these circles that now are our logo. Recommend. So we've added recommend to kind of foment systems change, and we learned that through this project. We've been working on this for 10 years. We were tapped along with Philadelphia and 3 other cities by national foundations to really look at the dropout issue and bring disconnected youth to the center of school reform. So that was before Opportunity Youth and before Collective Impact, but it was the same thing. So we got after it. We got together a group of cross-sector stakeholders, much like Philadelphia, and we got our mayor to convene us. We really did it, but we got our mayor to be our champion for a day. And once he was our champion for a day, he was our champion for the next 20 years. So I should say 10 years. He was in office. He just left 20 years, but he's with us 10 years. And our goal was to lower the dropout rate. And at first, we had a hard time getting started because we had all these different stakeholders, some from JJ, some from CBOs, the school district, the city, the state. And everybody had a different idea about where to start. Some people were like, oh, you have to start with incarcerated youth because those are the most far gone and the most really, you know, the most in need of an intervention. And others are like, it's no good if you don't start in elementary school because you'll just keep having, you know, the problem over and over, as I think Mayor Stanton talked about when he was up here. So what we did was we conducted a lot of research on a number of levels, and that kind of brought us together. And it took 2 years, all told. It took about a year to do all the research, and then another year to chew on it. Of course, we're meeting, and we got our stakeholders who were at the table involved in the research, because some of it was quantitative. We hired a labor market studies agency to look at how dropouts were counted. Back then, there was a big kind of effort, maybe a conspiracy of silence, going back to the song, to really keep the problem invisible and how we count the numbers. So we had somebody just working on really helping us take different slices and look at that. Somebody working on the economic impact. But also, we were interviewing youth and parents, educators, everybody who came to our table, any naysayer, like Shakima said, we would say, hey, we want to interview you too, come on over. And we would process all of this with the group as we went along, and we started to get some consensus. So over time, we got to some data points that really resonated, you know, like